You are listening to the Examine Life with Bram Levinson. In the first episode of this podcast, I had mentioned that the frequency with which episodes would be released would vary, depending on certain factors. And as I sit down now to record and to speak to you all, I realized that the last episode was released, I want to say, 8 days ago. And since then, I have not sat down to record. And it's not for lack of wanting to. It has been just that I've been incredibly busy and in the best way. And I was in British Columbia teaching, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And I was giving the Yoga Nidra teacher training, which is just such an incredible way for me to pass on what has proven to be so effective and so relevant for me in this life and this experience of life to other people, so that it can be relevant to them and that it can make a difference for them. And it seems to be making such a difference so quickly in people's lives, just in terms of how they see the world and how they see themselves, and just the psychology of reframing everything. It's fascinating, and I'm really honored to do it. I'm very grateful to be able to travel to teach and to be invited out to teach and to find community wherever I go. It's really something I could never have predicted before I got into this phase of my life over a decade ago, but I am very grateful for it. And so I was in Kamloops in British Columbia giving the Yoga Nidra training, and I was told by one of the students that there was a book. The subject matter I was talking about made her think of this book called Flow, and the actual title of it is Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. And the author's name is Mihaly, Mihaly. His last name, I'm not even going to try to pronounce. It has a C in the beginning. It has an I in the end. It has about 47 consonants with a couple of vowels thrown in there in the middle. And I really don't mean to be disrespectful at all. It's not that. It's just, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because I know I'm going to get it wrong. And I have gone through however many, I'm in my 47th year of life, and people have messed up my name, Bram, so often over the past 46 plus years that I can't even go into it. I mean, I've been called everything. I've been called Bran, as in flakes. I have been called Brain. Someone actually said, Brain, how are you? And I was like, do you want to give that a think before you follow up on that question? I mean, logically, let's just think of. I know I'm diverging from what I'm here to talk about, but I have to say this. Who says that to someone? Who calls someone Brain and doesn't take a second to think that perhaps there's no one in the world who would call their child Brain? I mean, did that person really think that my parents were sitting around thinking, oh my God, you know what? A great name would be Brain. That's a name to live up to. So, I mean, I've been called Bran, as in flakes. I've been called Brain. I've been called everything. So, all that to say that I'm not even going to try to pronounce this author's last name. But what you need to know about this book, Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, is that it speaks to me in a way that is so personal and hit me so quickly, so early on in the book, that I immediately felt myself just sort of being drawn into it, almost against my better knowledge and against my better judgment, because I started to read it when I was just going to sleep one evening when I was in Kamloops. And when I teach like that, when I teach that intensively, I am by nature someone who doesn't necessarily I'm not energized when I'm among people. I know that definition of someone who gets energized when they are among people, that's like an extroverted characteristic. I'm more of an introvert. I recharge a lot more when I'm on my own, in silence, quiet, without a lot of stimulus or stimuli around me. So for me to go anywhere and teach for, 4-5 days consecutively like that, where it's just me speaking, it's hours and hours and hours of me speaking and holding space for other people and really sort of keeping everything intertwined so that everything flows seamlessly and everything is interwoven seamlessly. when I do it, it takes it out of me. So, I typically will go teach, and then I'll go back to my hotel room and just get like very, very horizontal and just hang out and watch shows or read or whatever. And anyway, I got into this book one night right before I was going to bed, and against my better judgment, I just got drawn into it and kept reading. And it speaks to me because when I was a kid, high school for me was fine. I did my own thing. I was in a very private, very dead poet society, very unpleasant atmosphere in high school, and I completely rebelled against it. I skipped my gym class for 4 years. I would write myself notes signed from my mother saying Bram has to leave today at 1 p.m. And I did it for years until I got caught, until the headmaster actually called me in and sat me down, and on his desk was one of those notes from my mother. And he pointed to it and he said, "Your mother didn't write that, did she?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, go back to class." And that was it. That was the end of me writing myself notes. But by then it had been a couple of years. So, I understood the structure, and I understood how to break away from the structure to get what I needed. And I would, go downtown. I would do whatever the hell I wanted to do. Then I got into post-secondary studies. And in post-secondary studies, I wasn't as sheltered. There wasn't as much structure that I had to adhere to. And all of a sudden, it was really up to me. I had unlimited choice as to what I was going to study and what direction it was going to lead me in, and sort of allow myself to fantasize about what my future might look like. And I really had no idea. I come from a family of lawyers. My father's a lawyer, my brother's a lawyer, uncles, cousins, and I knew that was not what I wanted. I saw how they worked. I saw how much stress they carried. I saw, how they came home bringing their work, and I just thought, there's something else. I'm not fucking doing that. So post-secondary, I decided to study creative arts. I studied creative arts, and I thought, you know what, this is so vast that there will be something within it that's going to resonate with me. The only course that I took in my program that resonated with me was religious cults and sects. And it was fantastic. It was so brilliant. It was so fantastic. For my, term project, I ended up going to the Hare Krishna temple. And this was long before I even knew what yoga was or Hinduism was. But I went to the Hare Krishna temple and I spent the day with them. And it was just insane. It was so amazing. And that course I got 100% in. Every other course I took, I dropped out of. I just stopped going. Because the second I realized that whatever the subject was or whatever I was learning, the second I learned it and realized I am never going to use this or I'm never going to do this professionally, I would just stop. Because I was very aware of the concept of wasting time. I've always felt like I was in a race against time. And from a very, very early age, I refused to do anything that didn't make my soul hum. And it caused me a lot of shit when I was younger. It caused me a lot of trouble because I would drop out, let's say from school, and for a while I wouldn't say anything to anybody. So my parents thought I was going to school. And then, the truth would out and they would lose their shit and they would, sort of try and redirect me. And they would do what parents are supposed to do, which is make sure that their children are sort of following the prescribed avenues so that they can stand on their own 2 feet and live in a world and a system that, we all have to sort of adhere to. We've got to play the game. So I get it. I understand what they did, and I have complete respect for them that they were so strict with me. But they had met their match, I think, because I was very good at sort of giving over the illusion of power where I would say, okay, yeah, sure, absolutely, and still go do my own thing. So all I knew was that if I wasn't in school, I would be working. So I dropped out of school, went to work for a bit, decided, okay, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to try something else. So creative arts didn't work out. Let's see about English literature because I still do. I loved literature. I loved reading. And so I'll never forget it. This time I was in a university, not a college. I was in university. I was studying English literature, and we were assigned the importance of being earnest as sort of like a reading. I remember the teacher had a bunch of us seated at desks at the front of the class, and we were reading the play, The Importance of Being Earnest. And the people who were in the class with the people who were, so I was one of the people reading one of the parts, and the other people who were reading the parts felt that they needed to put on a British accent to do it. And so I'm at the front of the class and we're reading The Importance of Being Earnest, and these people who don't know what the hell a British accent is are putting on the worst British accents, and I couldn't handle it. I was like, you know what? I'm fucking done. So again, I left school. And I know it sounds really trite that that's why I left, but you need to understand that I have always refused to do what didn't sit well with me. And I knew that it didn't sit well with me because it would make my stomach start to flip-flop. That was always the warning sign for me. And when my stomach started to flip-flop, that was it. That was all I needed to know. So, dropped out of school, went to go work. Long story short, the work that I got ended up leading to more work, and I did really well in my first career, and I was really proud of it, and blah, blah, blah. But all of this to say that the inability that I had to settle, the inability that I had to sort of accept mediocrity and just do whatever because everybody else thought it was what I should do, that inability to just shut up and keep going with it, I've always been really proud of, even though it's gotten me into a lot of trouble, even though it was the path of most resistance for me. I had so many people around me, brothers, parents, grandparents, some friends, trying to tell me, like, you need to sort your shit out because if you don't figure it out, this isn't going to end well. And I understand why they were telling me, but I also, in the moment, understood they were telling me this for their own sake. It had nothing to do with me. It had to do with if I, especially from my parents' point of view, and I guess my brothers, but I really understood that if I wasn't in a nice little compartmentalized box that made them feel like I was okay, then they weren't okay. And they just wanted to be okay. I don't think it had a lot to do with me. I think it made them uneasy. It made them uncomfortable. And for them to become easy and comfortable, they needed me to just like shut the hell up and just get on with it. And I refused to do that. I have always refused to settle, and I will always refuse to settle. So I ended up finding myself in this career and working my ass off in this career, and it was fantastic. And then cut to, 35 years of age, where all of a sudden the flip-flops start again. I'm no longer working with the people who I loved working with. I didn't give a shit about the work I was doing. It was completely irrelevant. I was selling shit to people who didn't need it for a company that barely gave a shit about me, and, I was just making one fat cat fatter. So that wasn't my intention. And I had the sneaking suspicion that there was something else I was supposed to do. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that it was designed to help people heal. That's all I knew. And so once again, I decided to just leave. I quit my job. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea what I was going to do. And long story short, here I am. You know the story. And if you don't, look it up. It's somewhere in the zeitgeist. But ultimately, again, when I sort of rebooted my career, because I don't see it as my career now, it's my life. But when I rebooted my career, I decided to go for gold. I decided to go for the stuff that meant the most to me and see if I could make a livelihood out of doing those things, which is what has happened, which is beyond a blessing. This makes me, this is like winning the lottery because, the concept of retirement came up recently in a conversation with someone. And I said to them, retirement is for people who don't like what they do. I'll never retire. Until this body takes its last breath, I will be doing what I'm doing, whether it's the podcasting or whatever, but I'm going to be accompanying people. I'm going to be guiding people. I know that. So I rebooted the career and ended up doing what I love, what makes my soul hum. And within the context of doing what makes my soul hum, I have found these new little ways to up the ante and to make my soul hum in different ways, by challenging myself, by educating myself, by taking on new projects and new mediums like this podcast, like writing books, like bringing people around the world for these transformational experiences, like giving trainings, like creating stuff that doesn't exist until it comes from the inspiration that passes through my brain and through my heart and through this body. I have always been very clear that the most significant moments for me, the moments that I look forward to, are the moments where my soul hums. So let's bring it back to this book. Let's bring it back to flow. This book talks about, and it talks about something that I've been talking about for years, which is that we have been conditioned to always look towards the future as being the time where we're going to get what we want. So I remember when I was a kid, I was a kid who was dealing with very sort of mature subjects, probably at an age that was too young to be dealing with these subjects, but I was. And I guess one of the sort of byproducts of that was that I always felt older than my actual age, or at least my biological age. And I seeked out friendships from people who were older than me, always. When I was 12, 13, my friends were 16, 17, 18, always. And, I had been taught, you need to go to school and the freedoms that you're looking for, they'll come after that. But for now, you got to play the game. And when you think about it, we're taught that, Friday night is something to look forward to. Look forward to Friday night because it's the end of the work week. That's when you can chill. Look forward to your vacation because that's when you can relax. When you go on vacation. And by the way, I've said it before, but you know that when you look forward to Friday night and when you look forward to vacation, you better also factor into the equation that that's also when the body is going to start to get sick. Because if you've been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and you haven't given the body the opportunity to rest and for the nervous system to come back to default settings, that will happen once you get to that point that you thought was going to be so relaxing. It is relaxing, but it's so relaxing after coming off of such a doing cycle that the body very often just crashes. And so it's almost hard to enjoy those moments. But we're also taught that when we make a certain amount of money, things will be better. When we have a certain dollar amount in the bank account, things will be better. When we get the job, when we get the boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, when we get the house, when we, achieve all these things that our culture conditions us to believe are important, that's when things will be better. So we think that it's those moments. Now, I mentioned some of those moments are the down moments, the down times. What I'm about to say, I don't want to make it seem like downtime is not valuable and can't be those moments where your soul hums. They absolutely can be. But I think that they're only that if you work for them and you plan for them and this is going to be the moment that is going to balance out the doing, all of the doing, like my time in Kamloops or wherever I am when I do a training like that. I know that I'm going to work intensively for a certain amount of hours a day, and then I'm going to go back to wherever I am, and I'm going to crash for hopefully an equal amount of hours or more, because that's really where I find balance. And that may sound insane to you, but that's really what is best for me, and that's how I get to do all of this and not have it completely deplete me. So this book, Flow, talks about the concept that it isn't actually the moments of downtime or rest that are the moments that are actually going to bring us what we are seeking. It talks about the concept of optimal experience. An optimal experience is essentially the moment where the person is jumping beyond his or her limits, his or her boundaries, doing something that is a challenge, doing something that requires a lot of effort, a lot of attention, and is a place where that person's skill can meet the opportunity that is available to him or her. So in the context of my past couple of weeks, when I go out to the other side, or let's say I'm traveling, if I'm traveling somewhere to go teach and I'm giving a training, the concept of traveling for work, the concept of going somewhere that is not home, the concept of training people on something that I believe makes such a difference and really making sure that I'm doing it in the most efficient and effective ways possible, all of this is requiring me to operate at a pace and at a level that requires me to be at my best. It requires me to do the best that I can. I have never worked harder than I work now, and I've never been more satisfied than I am now. And that kind of defines the optimal experience. The psychology of optimal experience is basically telling us that The moments where our soul is going to hum are the moments where we are almost proving to ourselves what we're capable of, and we are doing good in the process, and we are finding purpose throughout the entire thing. These are the moments that we should be looking forward to. And what it requires really from each one of us is to identify how we want to, I suppose, express ourselves, what we want to pass on, how we want to work, how we want to excel, whether it's, a physical thing, whether we want to run a marathon or whether we want to, just be really ambitious in our careers. But it's really identifying how we could jump beyond our wildest expectations of what is possible for ourselves and actually make it happen. Now, I am vitally aware that there are many of you out there, some of you have spoken to me in the past about this, but there are many of you out there who are tired of the you can do it, jump beyond yourself, keep seeking, reach for the stars, go for your dreams kind of talk. I understand that because there are many of you who do that already, and there are many of us who live our lives in the pursuit of doing more and being more and seeing what's possible. And so for these people, maybe doing more isn't the thing that you need to be doing. Maybe you do need that downtime, but understand that that downtime can be your optimal experience because you have worked for it. Okay, so if you were just lying around on a sofa all day, that would actually be an obstacle for you to be able to achieve optimal experience because there's nothing sparking you into action. There's sluggishness, there's laziness, there's slothiness. And so, yes, there can be downtime, and that can be extremely helpful, especially for people who are very go, and doers. But understand that it can only be optimal experience if it is balanced out by a lot of the doing. Now, for the rest of us who are seekers and who are constantly sort of testing the parameters of what's possible, this concept of optimal experience, I think, speaks to us. It speaks to me. It speaks to me because as a kid, I was looking for optimal experience and I wasn't finding it. Contrary to what most people were doing, I wasn't settling for whatever was in front of me to make everybody else happy and to just sort of put on the blinders and get shit done. I had made a decision, even though I didn't have the languaging to explain it or describe it, I had made an unconscious decision to not settle for anything less than optimal experience. If something presented itself to me and it was less than optimal experience, then I left and I went to seek out something different that potentially would hold what I was seeking. Cut to today, where I'm constantly searching and I'm constantly doing and I'm constantly seeking. And trust me, there is a lot of being that balances out all of that. I have a lot of downtime and I appreciate that downtime because I have worked for that downtime. But when I do this, when I podcast, when I go teach, when I bring people around the world, you better believe that I am operating on a level that I never thought possible. And there is a level of bliss, and there is a level of joy, and there is a level of satisfaction of having achieved something that no one mentored me for, no one guided me towards, no one even told me was possible. I have made all of this happen. Well, me and, me following, I think, divine guidance and instinctual urges and intuition. But nonetheless, when you look at it from the lens of a very human experience, I have done something that is so far off the beaten path that it had to be explained to my parents as I was going because they didn't understand it. They didn't understand that it was even possible to do something like this. And I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud that I stuck to my guns, and I'm really proud that I stick to my guns. And you know what? 46 plus years later, I was fucking right. I can now say, just to quote my friend Sean, who I interviewed in an episode a couple of episodes ago, I was fucking right. I knew it. I knew it. And I'm so proud of myself for not having settled for bullshit. And I'm so proud of myself for not having settled for mediocrity. I'm so proud that I kept my eyes on a prize that wasn't even visible, but that I trusted was there. I had faith it was there. I knew somehow, some deep spiritual knowing, I knew that there was greatness for me waiting. I don't mean that in the realm of the world. I don't mean that I'm on a magazine cover and everybody thinks I'm the shit. It's not about that at all. Greatness, as far as I'm concerned, is not dependent on what other people think of me. Greatness for me is dependent on what I can do, how I can achieve, and how I can prove to myself that anything is possible. Given the opportunities that I have, given the privileges that I have that I am fully aware of, I want to keep on seeing what's possible, and I want to inspire other people so that they realize that what's possible for me isn't just relegated to me. The world is an endless stream of possibilities, except if we're stuck in some mundane cycle of mediocrity, we don't see it because we've given up. We've given up on it. Now, optimal experience isn't going to be for everyone this practice of seeking and learning and testing and innovating. For some people, optimal experience is raising their children. For some people, and this resonates with me, optimal experience is taking on a new physical practice, like let's say going to the gym or running or hiking or cycling or doing whatever, and seeing how capable you are in doing that, especially if it doesn't come naturally for you. This transformation in my life over the past 2 years of going to the gym and eating a little bit differently was mind-blowing. And part of the reason why I love it so much, and part of the reason why I'm still so motivated and galvanized to keep going with it, is because I never thought it was possible for me. I never thought that I could operate at this level and feel as good as I feel at this level, doing something physically and being able to do it sustainably, right? Because remember, very early on, I found myself in a pattern of starting things and then stopping. So while I was very proud of myself for stopping, I was also being negatively reinforced by everybody saying you're doing the wrong thing, which led me to believe that I was going to be in a lifetime cycle of beginning things but not ending them. So when I first went to the gym in the late 90s, that's what happened. I was the ideal client because I would go to the gym, and then after 3 months, I would stop, but I would pay for the whole year. Do you know what I mean? Like, what better client do you want? You're getting paid, and you don't have to do anything for them. So all that to say that optimal experience is different for each one of us, but it requires us to be very, very clear about how we focus our attention. Because our attention is everything. What you focus on is going to prioritize the object of your focus. It's going to become the most important thing for you in that moment. And given that the mind can only focus on one thing at a time, this is something that we learn in psychology, this is something that we learn in Hinduism. If the mind can only focus on one thing at a time, and the mind easily tends towards the negative, and the mind easily tends towards the extreme, then consider that without us doing any work, we are thinking about what is extreme and negative by default. That is never going to bring us to optimal experience. So it requires us to be mindful of what we are thinking about in any given moment and be aware of how what we're thinking about is potentially motivating us either towards hope and faith or towards fear. Fear is going to paralyze us. Fear is going to send us in the opposite direction of where we want to go. Fear is going to mess up our ability to accurately predict the future. Faith and hope are going to direct us and motivate us to jump beyond ourselves, to test the waters, to see what if it's possible. And then once we've taken that initial baby step, realize, I can take another baby step and another. And before we know it, we are on a path, we are on a trajectory that is bringing us in I guess the direction of like our greatest hopes and dreams. And it doesn't mean that we're achieving what we thought we were going to achieve, but it means that our soul is vibrating with just like vitality in this process of moving in a direction that we didn't even think we were capable of moving in, and seeing just how beautiful and fantastic and mind-blowing it is. This is available to every single one of us. I want you to ask yourself, what moments do you experience optimal experience in? What are the moments? What are your optimal experiences? When do you feel like your soul is humming? When do you feel the most vibrant, the most alive, the most well, for lack of a better term? I think it's really important that we understand this. I think it's really important that we recondition and reframe our thinking so that we understand that the moments that are going to bring us what we hoped we were going to get out of this experience of life are not necessarily the moments where we catch a break. They may be the moments where we push ourselves further than we thought possible, only to find that the limits of what we thought possible needed to be expanded and sort of moved outwards. This concept of optimal experience, I think, is something that exists in the yoga studio. I think it exists in gyms. I think it exists in people's homes. It exists in our minds. So wherever we go, it is. But when people, let's say for a yoga class, come to the studio, I know that they are bringing their skill to the opportunity, right? The class is waiting for them. And it's a question of pushing themselves in some cases a little bit further than they ordinarily would to see what was possible in terms of a posture, in terms of breathing, in terms of balance. That's for some people. For other people, they may come to the yoga class and think, you know what, I've been pushing myself all week. Let me take this one a little bit easy. But in either case, optimal experience is waiting. So I think that it's really important for us to be able to identify where we can experience this. Where are the moments, and when are the moments, more importantly, that we can experience this soul vibrating moment that makes life more of what we wanted it to be but didn't know was possible. We didn't know where to look. I wrote my first book, The Examined Life, sort of predicated on the understanding that most people get to a point in their life when they ask themselves, is this it? Is this all there is? Because we are conditioned to constantly look towards the future and trust that that's when things will get better, at a certain point, everybody hits that point that used to be the future, and all of a sudden it becomes the present, and realizes, I'm not cool with this. I'm not down. I'm not happy. And then they ask the question, well, is that it? Is this it? Is this all there is? And what this book, this brilliant book, refers back to us is the knowledge that there is more. But you have to trust there is more. And you have to have faith there is more. And you have to operate from that faith. You've got to let that faith change the way you act in the world so that you are in pursuit of it. And not just in a sort of dangling carrot kind of you'll never get to it way that brought you to the initial stage of, is this all there is? Maybe it's understanding that it's time to pursue our passions. Maybe it's time to understand that maybe I need to change my career. Maybe I need to do what makes me so happy. Maybe I need to travel more. Maybe I need to eat differently. Maybe I need to go do something with my body that is different than what I traditionally have been doing to see if it's possible, to see how it changes my body, to see how it changes how I feel in my mind and my body. But maybe it's time for us to start exploring our options, because if you are listening to this, chances are you have options. Not everyone does. This is privilege at work. I believe that when and where there is privilege, there is the responsibility to exercise that privilege so that we inspire each other as to what's possible and bring as many people with us as possible. So I dare you. I dare you to start exploring the boundaries of what is possible for you so that you can start to work at whatever that is for you, but work at it harder than you ever thought you could work, and see just how incredible these moments of optimal experience can be. Give it a think. Please feel free to reach out and let me know how it goes. And I'll see you later. This has been The Examined Life with Bram Levinson.